Our next speaker is a plant-based athlete and bodybuilding champion, recognized as one of the world's top personal trainers. She has a master's degree in social work, is a coach, published author, podcast host, and a leading voice for revolutionary transformation in the fitness and wellness industries. Please welcome Ella Magers.
Hello, everyone. Wow, I am thrilled to be here. And being the athlete and the coach that I am, I love to move my body. And I want to invite you all for us to kick this off together by just moving and stretching a little bit. So if you're able to stand up for a second, and let's connect our breath with our movement and take a deep breath in and raise your arms all the way up and stretch. Breathing in and then let it go. Shake it out. And we'll do it one more time. Big breath in, breathe in, and let it go and just shake it out. Shake your body a little bit. Nice. And then go ahead and have a seat. We're going to do two other movements before I really get into this talk. And these are movements that I want you to take with you because they're going to help set you up for a healthy spine, right? Help you with your posture. Because the truth is, in today's day and age especially, we are all hunched over our phones, we are hunched over our laptops, we are driving, we are sitting, and we're creating a C curve in our spine, when our natural curvature is more like an S. And really important, we're talking about being healthy for a lifetime, we've got to have a healthy spine. So take your pointer finger, place it on your chin. Now, I want you to pretend as if somebody's coming in to kiss you, and you don't want to be kissed, and you're going to retract that chin. You're going to retract your cervical spine, and then you're going to extend and come back to neutral. All right, we're going to do that 4 more times. It's the personal trainer coming out in me. Here we go. We're going to retract, cervical retraction, extend, back to neutral. We got 3 more. Retract, extend, 2 more, retract, extend, and 1 more, retract and extend. Yes, because we're here and we need to be here. All right, next we're gonna go down the back a little bit to our back, and we're gonna do scapular retraction and back extension. So scapular retraction means you're gonna take your shoulders, which we are now hunched over, right? We're gonna pull our shoulder blades together in the back. That's scapular retraction. You can do that right there in your seat. And now, chest, heart, we'll call it a heart to the sky. Extend. Come back to neutral, and then let your shoulders relax, and you'll feel them move forward. All right, again, so retract those shoulder blades, extend through the back. That's 2, we got 3 more. Retract, extend. Couple more, retract, extend. Let's do 1 more, retract, and extend. Amazing. So if you can do that, first thing when you wake up, at lunch when you're taking a break, and at night before you go to bed, 10 times each of those, just those 2 exercises, it's going to make a huge difference in setting you up to have an active and healthy life long into your old age. All right? All right, so now let's talk about nutrition for a moment. You know, obviously, understanding the what when it comes to eating is incredibly important. And you've got superstars of nutrition up here on the stage today, a lot of whom are talking about the what to eat. So what I want to focus on is more about your relationship with food and how you eat. All right? Now, there's a quote by Maya Angelou. She said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better." Simple, right? Well, thanks to this amazing conference and all the research I know all of you are doing and the podcast you're listening to, you're going to know what to eat. But I have so many clients come to me and say, you know what? I pretty much know what to eat, but for some reason, I'm still not doing it. So does that ring true, right? So what I want to send you home with is some inspiration and some tools that will help you apply the information you're learning to your lives, to your everyday life, to your lifestyle. so that you can consistently make conscious and healthy choices. And I strongly believe, you all, that prioritizing your own health so that you can feel happy, full of life, and energized is so important, because healing ourselves is the first step to helping to heal this world, and showing ourselves love is really what's needed to be able to spread love to the world. So I want to thank you all. I'm so grateful that you made it a priority to be here today. All right, so let's have a little fun. I'm going to transport us all the way back to 1990. And I was 10 years old. I'm going to share a lot of my story today. I was 10 years old. I was in the 5th grade, and it was field day at school. Did anybody have field day in elementary school? Yeah? So part of our field day was pull-ups for the boys and a chin-up hold for the girls. So there I was, I'm 10, I'm waiting in line, and I was a really shy kid. And I'm watching the boys go up one at a time, and some of them would struggle and get 1, maybe 2 pull-ups, others none. And then the girls' coach would lift them up so their chin was over the bar, and they would hang on for dear life. And then it was my turn. And I walked up, and coach came over to lift me up, and I was like, no. And I jumped up there, and I started whipping out pull-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. See, I was a shy little girl, except when it came to athletics. I'd been into sports since I was 5, starting with gymnastics and swimming, and I was really proud that I was strong, that I could out-pull-up all the boys in school. And the kicker was, at that time, at 10 years old, I was already 3 years. It was 3 years after I had cut out meat from my diet, and I'll share that story here in just a little bit. But first, we're going to transport now 16 years later to 2007. And now I'm 27, and I'm stepping on stage at the FAME World Bodybuilding Championships as a bikini and fitness competitor. Thank you. And I had decided to compete for the sole purpose of proving that you could have a strong, lean, muscular physique eating a diet exclusively made up of plants. Because at that point, it was now 20 years since I cut out meat, and 12 years after going completely vegan, plant-based. And I won. I won first place, so check that off. Go plants. Thank you. First place in the bikini division, and I took second in the fitness and fitness model categories. All right, one more transport. Now we're going to transport to just the other month. Now it's 2023, and I'm sparring. So I've been into Muay Thai kickboxing for the last 20 years, and I still do a lot of sparring. And my sparring partner, one of them, is named Willie. Willie's about 29 or 30 years old. And I bring my rescue Chihuahua, who's now 17 years old. And she's been plant-based for 14 years since I've had her. So, yeah, she's still going strong. And she comes and hangs out while I spar. And Willie looked at me, and he's like, hey, Ella, Shy, she's like your little Pokemon. And I looked at him, and I kind of a confused look on my face, and I was like, Willie, I don't really know what that means. And he looked at me, and he goes, you don't know Pokemon? He's like, oh my God, you were a deprived child. And I looked at him, and I said, dude, I'm 43 years old. We didn't have Pokemon when I was a little kid. I was watching Mr. Rogers, and he goes, oh my God, I've been sparring with him for a year. He goes, you're 43? He couldn't believe it, because I keep up. I can tell you, standing here now at 43 years old, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. Thank you. And that's 35 years no meat and 28 years as a whole food plant-based vegan. And I certainly don't share these things to brag, right? I share them to demonstrate what's possible eating plants alone. And I also share them along with the message that that being physically fit is certainly one aspect of true health, but it doesn't equal true health. And by true health, I mean holistic health. And by holistic health, I mean that includes mental and emotional fitness. And it includes an overall sense of happiness and purpose. So, speaking of purpose, I discovered mine at the age of 7 years old. Story goes, I was after first grade, I got my car after school. My mom picked me up to take me to gymnastics practice. And she asked me how my day was, and I said, well, Mom, we learned about this guy named Daniel Boone. Do you guys know who Daniel Boone is? Yeah, he's one of our first American folk heroes, and he was a wilderness guy. He carried around a shotgun, and he wore a raccoon hat. And I go, Mom, this guy was supposed to be a hero, but he wasn't. He was so mean. He killed animals, and he ate them. And my mom was driving, and she was just honest with me, and she said, well, Ellie, we're just very lucky these days. We get to go to the grocery store and buy our meat. We don't have to do that ourselves anymore. And it was at that moment that I connected the food on my plate with the animal that it was. And I was horrified. And I said, oh my God, Mom, I'm never doing that again. And that was it. I never ate meat again. Not only did I stop eating meat, I really knew intuitively that it was my purpose on earth to be a voice for animals and to help people make the transition to a plant-based diet. So what happened when that light bulb moment, came is that I realized that I had this core belief that all animals deserve love and respect, despite society's programming that tells us that certain animals we call pets and others we call food. So let's dive a little deeper into this idea of programming. Dr. Bruce Lipton, he's an epigeneticist and a cell biologist, he talks about how from the ages 0 to 7 specifically, our subconscious mind is kind of like a wiped hard drive being programmed by the influencers in our lives, our teachers, our parents, obviously friends, TV, magazines, to create our perception of reality, which we come to believe is the reality, right? That includes all our beliefs about what is right and wrong. And it includes our beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of. And the vast majority of that programming is highly limiting. And it's our subconscious mind that runs the show 90 to 95% of the time. So that means our conscious thinking brain's only working about 5 to 10% of the time. That leaves us very little opportunity to actually think for ourselves, which is pretty crazy, right? It means that most of us are moving through this world completely unaware that we're not actually who we think we are, and that we are capable of so much more, much less that we have the ability to change all of it. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, right? So I want to, let me give you a declaration. So I call them declarations. Some people call them affirmations or mantras, and they're basically a belief that we're choosing to have, a statement that we're choosing to believe because it's going to serve us better and empower us. And this first one of these declarations I'm going to introduce today that I want you to take home and try on for size is, just because I have a thought doesn't make it true. Just because I have a thought doesn't make it true. So one of the programs that we download I want to explore here for a moment is actually a belief system that psychologist Dr. Melanie Joy, anybody know Dr. Melanie Joy? She's amazing. She just had a book come out. She calls it carnism. And it's the belief that eating animals and their secretions is normal, natural, and necessary. Normal, look around, pretty much everyone's doing it, right? Natural, we believe it's the way it's always been and the way it always will be. And necessary, We are bombarded with misinformation our whole lives about how we need meat and dairy to be healthy. Right? I don't know about you all, but when I was a little kid, we had a rule that I had to drink an entire glass of milk before I left the dinner table. Anybody else have to drink milk when they were a kid? Yeah. And I hated the taste of milk. I mean, hated the taste of milk. So I had a whole system for getting it down. I had to mentally prepare myself. I remember this so clearly. And then I would take a deep breath in. I would hold my nose. I would chug the entire glass of milk really quickly, as fast as I could. Then I would grab some water and chase it before I breathed out again. It was like my routine, and it was torture. And my mom made that rule out of pure love because she believed that without drinking that milk, I'd have brittle bones, and it would be her fault, right? So, the meat and dairy industry. Let's talk about the dairy industry for a moment, and let's put on our logical caps. Like, let's get into that conscious thinking brain just for a minute. How does it make any sense that we need to drink the breast milk of a cow, or any other species for that matter, but especially a cow who produces milk for one reason and one reason only? What is that reason? To feed her babies. Yes, and to help her babies grow up to be 1,400 pounds. Talk about great marketers. The milk industry has those, right? That Got Milk campaign. Yeah, to have tricked us all into believing that drinking cow's milk is normal, natural, and necessary. Well, despite all of that, I was so connected to the suffering of animals that by the time I turned 15 years old, I had discovered all the information that I needed to know about the dairy and egg industries and the suffering involved to go from vegetarian to vegan. And I became an activist before I could drive a car. I mean, there I was, 15, right? An athlete, thriving. And that was without having meat in my diet for over half my life. And I had discovered that all those great pictures of happy cows on the farm, those were lies. So it stood to reason that all that health information, that was a lie too. Now, on another note, one really cool thing about going vegan in 1995 was that there was almost no processed vegan foods on the market. And while most people might see this as a disadvantage, looking back, that was really impactful in a positive way for me because it meant my options were pretty much whole foods. There was no Impossible Burgers, there was no Gardein chicken wings or vegan cheeses back then. There was vegetables, beans, there was tofu, nuts, seeds, fruits, whole grains. And to be fair, there was processed white bread and white pasta and Oreo cookies, which are accidentally vegan. And I can give a huge shout out to my parents right now because they were conscious enough to stock our kitchen with Whole Foods staples. So, and I had pretty much at that point, they knew it wasn't going to be a phase anymore, and I pretty much converted my family. So we had a plant-based household, and I have great memories in the kitchen. And my dad started cooking with me, and we would experiment with stir fries. He got a wok, and making cheesecakes out of silken tofu, and even Alfredo sauces made out of cauliflower and nutritional yeast. So, yeah. Awesome parents. I'm very, very, very fortunate about that. And this isn't to say I'm not grateful. I am very, very excited about and thankful for all the options that are out there today that make going plant-based, make that transition so much easier, right? Even if they're not the healthiest choices, because it goes back to my purpose. And really, my whole life has been about how. How do I best fulfill my purpose, which I see as making this world, doing my part to make this world a kinder, more compassionate place. So my whole life has been about how. So as a teenager, I thought, well, I didn't know what was happening behind the closed doors of factory farms. Then I found out, and then I just went vegan. So obviously, if I just tell everybody else what's going on, they're gonna go vegan too. So I was an activist as a high school student, and I did protests and organized leafleting campaigns. I'd even sit in cages on the sidewalk. My poor parents, they would drop me off so I could go sit in a cage, demonstrating the cramped conditions of farmed animals and labbed animals on the side of the road, because I just thought people didn't know. And I was met with so much resistance, right? Come to find out, most people didn't want to know that. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow. I didn't understand back then the power of programming and the fear of change, right? That need to be right, the fear of feeling wrong. So I knew giving up wasn't an option, but I knew my approach wasn't working, so I just knew I had to find a new approach. So off to college I went. I got a degree in social work. I didn't necessarily want to be a social worker, but I knew I wanted to be in service to humanity, so it seemed like a good option. And then following college, I had a boyfriend who had a health club consulting company. So I started working in the fitness industry. I got my personal training certification, and I discovered my next how. It was to become an inspiration, to become the shining example of the physique that most people wanted. It was my stealth vegan approach. Yeah, so I gotta go stealth here, all right. And it seemed to be working because people would come up to me and they'd say, how did you get to be so strong and muscular and lean? And I would happily tell them about how I was doing it, eating plants. And for those who were interested, and many were, I would take them on as a client and whip them into shape, help them change their diet and nutrition and their workouts. And I ran into a problem, though, and it's the reason we see so many great before and after photos, right? But not so many after photos, as I like to say. The photos 6 months, a year, 5 years later, when 80 to 90% of people who lose weight through dieting gain all the weight back. And the problem, and what I came to find out, is that the fitness industry has very little to do with true health. It's all about how you look on the outside. It's all about aesthetics. And because people weren't connecting with a deeper why, a more meaningful why, the physical changes were not sustainable. And so then I started finding myself feeling frustrated once again, feeling unfulfilled. And because I was putting so much pressure on myself to be in competition shape year-round, I developed a very unhealthy relationship with food and my body. And I became obsessed. I became obsessed with counting calories and tracking macros, how many grams of protein and carbs. And I was surrounded by the fitness people and the bodybuilders who were obsessed with protein and terrified of carbs. I don't know if you guys know about, and I was trying to meet the same macro counts, of course, the same number of protein and carbs on a plant-exclusive diet, which would make anyone crazy because all plants contain carbohydrates. They also contain protein, but they all contain carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are not evil. They're essential for our health and our performance, yet they're demonized. And I don't know if you know about the bodybuilding culture and the fitness culture, but it normalizes binging and restricting. I had bodybuilder friends whose normal schedule, Monday through Saturday, was super restrictive. It was chicken, broccoli, protein shakes every day. Or protein pudding. You can do all sorts of things with protein shakes. And then on Sunday, it was a free-for-all. It was a day-long binge on things like pizza and donuts. And I'm talking about a whole pizza and a dozen donuts. This was normal. And these are the people that we think are so healthy, right? And although I didn't eat pizza or donuts, I did do the restriction. I thought maybe I could just restrict and never binge. But that can't happen. Willpower always runs out when you're relying on willpower. And so I would restrict as long as I could, and then eventually the willpower would run out and I would binge. And I would binge on things like nuts and cereal. And there were times when there would be a night where I'd sit down and eat an entire jar of peanut butter in one sitting, and then hate myself for it, and starve myself basically to make up for it. Yeah, so as healthy and fit as I looked on the outside, I wasn't in great shape on the inside. But I did not want to appear unwell to anybody else because I was supposed to be the shining example, right? So I hid all my struggles from everybody in my life, even the people closest to me. It was a tough time. And while I was witness to my own suffering, I was also witness to the suffering of my clients, many of whom were also struggling with disordered eating, self-sabotaging behaviors, food addictions, addictions to drugs and alcohol, and it was all because they were trying to cover up negative emotions. They were trying to run, hide, and distract themselves from emotional pain. And what was interesting was that they really thought that happiness was waiting for them on the other side of weight loss, on the other side of a rockin' body. That's where happiness was. And there I was, with the body that they wanted, and a long way to go to be truly healthy, holistically, and happy. And it was that realization that caused me to decide to go back to school to get my master's degree in social work, to become better equipped to help people overcome those emotional barriers. And I knew I needed to heal myself in order to help heal others. And that's when my healing journey began. And I started practicing yoga. And I'm not gonna lie, I abhorred yoga at first, you guys. I was a Muay Thai fighter. I was a weightlifter. I was a bodybuilder. I was a mover. I was a doer. I was a go-getter. And to slow down, to focus on my being over my doing was so hard, so tough, and oh, so necessary. I hated yoga until I loved yoga. And now I can't imagine my life without it. And I also spent many years exploring my own programming, discovering my own blind spots, developing a healthy relationship with food, my body, and myself. I started to see food as nourishment, as medicine, and exercise as an act of self-care. Yeah. And this leads us up to 2013. So 10 years ago, I was 33, and I felt called to launch a brand. There were still so many stereotypes, and there still are, but 10 years ago, still so many stereotypes about what it meant to be vegan. I mean, vegans were still thought to be scrawny and unhealthy or stinky hippies, like, wear some deodorant, please. Or angry up on your soapbox, so many stereotypes. And I wanted to show people that being vegan, that compassion is sexy, that you can have fun, that being vegan is fun. It's not a sacrifice at all. It's a beautiful way to be. And so my brand that I created, Sexy Fit Vegan, was born. I was living in Miami at the time, seemed very Miami. And with that brand came some new realizations. I realized that I had so much compassion for everyone else that was suffering, animals, people, my whole life, and very little for myself. And I decided that it was time to share at that point, share about my journey, share about what happened with my relationship with food, my disordered eating. And so I wrote a series of blog posts, really coming out with everything. I didn't just tell my best friend, I decided to just, tell the world. And I remember clicking publish on that blog post. These were things I felt very shameful about until I did it. And I remember clicking publish and feeling literally this weight of shame lift from my body. Brené Brown says, shame cannot survive silence. Or shame thrives in silence. It cannot survive being spoken. Sorry. Yeah. And I really felt that. And so soon I had launched a podcast. I had a publishing company called and gave me a book deal, got a book out, and also developed a coaching program to help other people up-level their health holistically by developing this healthy relationship with food and their bodies. And yeah, that's helped hundreds of people over the last 8 years. So what I want to do for the next little part of this talk is talk about 5 of the tools that I use in my coaching that really empower people, because what I like to do is coach people to coach themselves, because that's empowerment, right? So let's talk about 5 of these tools. And the first one is what I call the power pause. And that's in that moment, right before you're about to make the same old unhealthy decision, out of habit, out of urge, out of a craving, you just pause. You take a step back. And what you do is approach yourself with curiosity and compassion. And that's the next declaration. I approach myself with curiosity and compassion. Okay. And then when it comes to your emotions, and that includes your thoughts and your emotions, when it comes to your emotions, you want to tell yourself the goal is not to feel better, it's to get better at feeling. I'm going to say that again because this is a game changer. The goal is not to feel better, it's to get better at feeling. Because from that place, you get to allow yourself to have whatever feelings you're having without trying to go and numb, distract, or hide from them. You get to have them. They're yours to have. Right? And the truth is, we can't really know happiness if we don't also know sadness. Right? And the more we can embrace loss, the more we can deeply and intimately experience love. And that's all part of this human experience that we signed up for when we were born. This crazy game we call life. It's all part of it, right? And from that place, we can then look at our thoughts and create new thoughts that can coach us into a healthy action. So let's just take a practical example here for a moment. You get home from work, you're exhausted, don't love your job. All you want to do is beeline to the cabinet, grab some potato chips, and go and watch some Netflix, right? I mean, anyone ever felt like that? Yeah. So what if, instead, you pause? Take that power pause. You approach yourself and your thoughts and your emotions with curiosity and compassion. You remind yourself, the goal here is not to feel better, it's to get better at feeling. And then you could ask yourself a very important question. What would I do if I really loved myself? How would that change your behavior? What would you tell your best friend to do? And maybe, instead of going for those potato chips this time, you decide to put a sweet potato in the oven and go take a warm bath, light up some candles, listen to some soothing music, maybe call your best friend. Right? Taking that power pause gives you the opportunity to create actions that are in line with your values. And I know because you're all here right now today that you care, that your values include being healthy for a lifetime. What action can I take to be healthy for a lifetime? Right? And this has everything to do with mindfulness. And that's the next tool. And we're going to go with mindful eating, for the purpose of this talk. So I was at the Holistic, I was doing a book signing on the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise, a great vegan cruise going out of Miami. And this was several years ago. And Dr. Michael Clapper, I think he's been a speaker here at this conference, yeah? Yeah, Dr. Clapper, awesome. And he was talking in his talk about chewing your food to a paste before swallowing and how important that was. And how we have enzymes in our saliva and how that starts the digestive process in our mouths with that chewing process. And how slowing down can help us stop eating when we're 80% full, because 20 minutes later, we're going to get to that 100% mark. Right? And I realized during that talk that I was more of a scarfing it down kind of eater. I was more of a scarfer. Is that a word, scarfer? I was a scarfer. And I had a lot of bloating. Even though I was eating lots of healthy food, I felt a lot of bloating after meals for many years. And so I decided to commit. I committed to making a smoothie in my mouth before swallowing, which sounds so gross, doesn't it? I'm gonna make a smoothie in my mouth with my broccoli. Yum, a broccoli smoothie. But I was committed. He convinced me. Dr. Clapper's good like that. And wow, you guys, making a smoothie in my mouth before swallowing my food, that made a huge difference. All the bloating went away. My digestive issues went away. It was awesome. But what Dr. Clapper didn't talk about is just how challenging it can be to change our habits, to change the way we've been eating our whole lives. And now all of a sudden you have to remember every time you sit down to eat slowly, and how annoying is that? And oh my gosh, it's gonna take me 5 hours to eat this salad, right? That's not easy. But that's where we have to go back and say, this is so important, right, for our health. And one of the exercises that I do with my clients is a mindful eating exercise. And so we're gonna just do this real quick. Close your eyes, sit up nice and tall, check your posture. Have we started slouching again? And then we're gonna do this as an imagination, but I want you to try this at home, right? So I'm gonna close your eyes and imagine there's a red seedless grape in front of you. And we're gonna go kind of through our senses. This is a way to be present with our food, to build a healthy relationship with our food. You've got this beautiful grape, and what is the first thing you do? You see it with your eyes. See it with your mind's eye, since you're closing your eyes, and notice the beautiful burgundy color of that grape and its beautiful shiny skin. And now you're gonna pick up that grape and you're gonna put it to your lips, and you're gonna feel the smooth skin on your lips. And as you put that grape into your mouth and you bite down, you hear the crunch, and you feel the insides of that grape squirting out into your mouth, and you start to taste the amazing flavor. Maybe it's sweet, maybe it's a little bit bitter, and as you chew, you start to smell the aroma, and you feel the textures of the chewy skin and the spongy insides. They're all kind of coming together as you chew to make a grape smoothie. Yes, it is, in your mouth. And then you chew until it becomes a smoothie, and then you swallow, and you feel that grape going down your throat, into your stomach, and you kind of imagine what that grape is gonna do for your body, how it's gonna nourish and fuel your body, how it's gonna give you energy, right? You can open your eyes. And as extreme as that sounds, this is the kind of practice that can help us change our habits, to be able to become more mindful, to become more present with our food and build a healthy relationship. And when we start to practice that mindfulness, there's a saying that says, how you do anything is how you do everything. You heard that? So then how can you start to expand that mindfulness to other areas of your life? When I started to really get mindful about my eating, I then started to get mindful about other things, including exercise. And I do have some postcards out there with a freebie for all of you, my mindful exercise plan. It's a $97 program for free for all of you, so make sure to pick up my postcard outside. Because that's the next tool. It's exercising out of love for yourself. Right? It's another mindset shift that we've got to make, because all too often we are exercising as a punishment, right? To burn off the calories we feel guilty about consuming. And how fun is that when exercise is a punishment? Do you guys know what a burpee is? Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, that's it. They're tough, right? I mean, even 10 burpees, and if I didn't have a dress on, I'd demo them, but yeah, even 10 burpees, you are out of breath. Well, do you know how many burpees it takes to burn off the calories of one serving of, let's use that Oreo cookie example, one serving of Oreo cookies? How many burpees do you have to, if you're doing tit for tat here, you know how many? 50,000. Over 100. One serving, so that's ridiculous. You can't out-exercise a bad diet, and you can't outrun your fork. So we've got to change things up. We've got to look at exercise differently. We've got to see it. And there's nothing wrong with having the goal of a strong, lean physique. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, though, we've got to also have a deeper why, a more meaningful why, so that it's not about willpower. Because when we have that as our only goal, is changing how we look, then you either get to your goal and then you lose your motivation because you got to your goal, right? That's the 80 to 90% people who gain the weight back. Or you don't reach your goal, and then you're frustrated and you quit because you feel like you failed. So we need a deeper why. We need to connect exercise with so many other things. We talked about the psychological benefits, the emotional benefits, stress relief, being healthy and active into old age, being able to play on the floor with our grandkids, right? Those are the connections we've got to make with a bigger, deeper why. So it's no longer about willpower. It's about aligning our actions with our values. So next tool, number 4, is getting the most bang for your caloric buck. Not going to talk a lot about this because you've got so many other people talking about nutrition here, but basically we want to just fill our plates with as many nutrient-dense plant foods as we possibly can. And I've got a couple methods for doing that. I've got my build-a-meal method, so I know a lot of people are busy or just don't love spending time in the kitchen. I'm not a chef. I'm not somebody who loves to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So what I have is some templates for building a meal without having to use a recipe. And they start with the most nutrient-dense foods, which are mostly our leafy greens, right? And then followed by vegetables of all different colors, filling out the rainbow. And then we can add the legumes, beans, peas, tofu, tempeh, some nuts and seeds on top. You can do this to create salads, bowls, burritos, loaded baked potatoes, right? And then I've got a KISS method. It's KYSS. It stands for Keep Your Staples Stocked. It means I buy at least a month's supply of all the things that aren't going to go bad, are my canned and dried beans, whole grains, frozen fruits and veggies, that sort of thing. I buy a month's supply, then I don't have to worry about it. These are things that I can whip up in 10 minutes or less using my build-a-meal templates. And then weekly, then I get to go and buy all the fresh produce. But it makes it just a lot easier, right? You've got your go-tos. Most of us have our go-tos. You create those plant-based, healthy go-tos, and then keep your kitchen stocked with the staples. Throw it together, and then add your flavor profile, as Stephanie likes to say. Add your flavor profile, because you can take the same kind of bowl, and you add a different kind of seasoning and sauce, and it's like you got a brand new meal. That's pretty cool, pretty easy. So it doesn't have to be complicated at all, and I love to think outside the box. Hashtag salad for breakfast. That's me. Salad for breakfast. Yep, I discovered a few years ago just how awesome it is to have a huge, what I call my Nutrilicious kale and white bean salad made out of kale, nutritional yeast, and I've got a favorite brand, ask me about it later, white beans or different kinds of beans, and some toasted pumpkin seeds on top. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It keeps me satisfied for hours. It fuels my training. So yeah, think outside the box. Think outside the programming. That's what it's all about. And traveling, quick tip for traveling. I told Ken I'd mention travel because I do travel quite a bit. I don't go for the trail mix, those things that are so calorie dense, right? Even though they've got some nutrition in them, of course, nuts and seeds, but you can overdo them so quickly when you're hungry on a plane. I take a collapsible container and I'll put my Nutrilicious kale and white bean salad in the collapsible container and take it on the plane and eat it. Pretty easy, and then I collapse the container. But then I've got a nice, healthy meal that I eat on the plane. And yes, it takes a little planning. It takes a little bit of prep, especially when you're first getting used to making these changes, right? But without our health, we have nothing, right? We've got to make our health a priority. Without it, we have nothing. And then the last tool I'm going to talk about today is expanding or widening our circle of compassion. And this is one that really, of course, hits home for me. We're talking about holistic health here, right? And that includes an overall sense of connection and purpose. And that has everything to do with compassion. I want you to think for a minute, who's in your current circle of compassion? So that means, who do you naturally just feel so much love and compassion for? Maybe it's a small circle. Maybe it's your immediate family, your pets, you know? And are you ready to start to open your heart to widening that circle? Maybe that's to wild animals. Maybe that's to farmed animals. Maybe it's to the people in your yoga class, the people in this room. You know, there's that quote about holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die, right? When we can lead with love, everything starts to shift and realize just how much we all have in common as human beings and as beings. And there's an ancient form of meditation. It's called Tonglen meditation. And it's Tibetan for sending and taking. And it teaches us how to lean into suffering and use suffering as a way to connect with others and to use it as a way to access peace in the midst of suffering. So I want to wrap this up by having us do a little Tonglen-inspired meditation. So again, sit up nice and tall and close your eyes for just a moment and connect with your breath. Feel your breath going in and out of your lungs. And also connect with your heart, the energy in that heart center. And now I want you to visualize breathing in darkness and negativity and breathing out light and positivity. Do that just a few times, breathing in darkness and negativity and breathing out light and positivity. And now, think of somebody in your life. It can be a person, it can be an animal, it could even be yourself, who is struggling, who is suffering, who is in pain. And I want you to think about that human or animal and breathe in their pain and breathe out relief for them. Breathe out anything that will benefit them. Do that just a few times. And last, I want you to think about beings all over the world who are suffering, struggling in similar ways to that person that you care so deeply about. Think about those people or animals and breathe in all of their pain, their collective pain, and breathe out their relief for all those beings. Beautiful. You can open your eyes. How does that feel? And I'll wrap it up right here with a chant that's used in a lot of modern yoga classes. The chant is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, and it means, it's Sanskrit for may all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my thoughts, words, and actions contribute to that happiness and freedom for all. So repeat after me. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Thank you all so much for being here, for listening, for being open. I love you all. Thank you.